Welcome everybody. I'm Barb Cederberg with Gopher State One Call. Gopher State One Call is the notification center in the state of Minnesota in the United States. And it's really a privilege to give this presentation this morning in memory of Geoff Zeiss. He was instrumental in helping us get organized, make progress, make connections to get our Minnesota Utilities Mapping Project off the ground and to the state that it is today. So I'll be telling us and everybody about how we got started and where we are today. But first, a little bit about Geoff. Just a really big thank you. He, like I said, is a key contributor to our mapping project. My observations as I worked with him, again, I just knew him for a few years, was his curiosity. He's very passionate about this topic. He's committed to each and every one of us. He would do whatever he thought was the right thing to do. He gave us ideas, he gave us connections. And then specifically on our mapping project team, the number one word that came to my mind when I put this together was connector. I mean, he connected us with Colorado, with the UK, with Canada, just on and on with the connections. The researcher that he was, the information sharing, the blog Between the Poles. I mean, I religiously read that and found it just so valuable. And that obviously was his strength in being a communicator for the whole industry and his passion. And then as we worked together on our project team, just a tremendous guide. We had some questions about agreements, for example, and he guided us to the right people to talk to that had already been down that path. And that's just one example of how Geoff helped us and assisted us and prodded us and supported us. So again, I wanted to take this time to really just say thank you and our appreciation to what Geoff offered us, but also the entire community. So let me get started on our mapping project team. We were founded in August of 2020, and it's a collaborative effort between Gopher State One Call, the notification center in Minnesota, and the Minnesota Geospatial Advisory Council. Minnesota has been one of the leaders in geospatial efforts for decades. And it just happened that some folks from Gopher State One Call were talking with Steve Swayze at the Geospatial Advisory Council in 2019. And after a period of time, we decided that let's get together and see where we could go with this. And so as we started, we formed a group of about 35 stakeholders in Minnesota with all of the different types of stakeholders and got started. What were we trying to do? So at the beginning, we said, let's see if we can get higher quality GPS maps. We know that some facility operators have very high quality maps in terms of accuracy, and there's also a lot of legacy data out there. But then how do we get this data into the hands of those that really need it? The design engineers, the excavators, the locators. So every step of the process can be more efficient and obviously much more safe. So we wanted safer excavation and increased efficiency and cost reduction of construction projects. And I know many of you have great examples of how by really knowing what's underground that you can save cost and increase safety. So what were we trying to do in Minnesota? As we started this, and again, really helped with Geoff, it became apparent that the technology exists today to enable real-time viewing of underground utility maps. We didn't really need to invent anything. We also decided that the GSOC One Call ticket should be the controlling area for viewing the maps of the underground utilities. But we're sensitive to the fact that access to the viewing should be limited by the time of it when a ticket is live. Not forever, but if it's a 2-week ticket time frame, like it is in Minnesota, let's have it for 2 weeks. But again, who should be able to view the maps? And so that's where the agreements come into place. Facility operators want to know who's viewing it and that they're trusted partners to view the maps. So it's not open to anybody and everybody, but there's a process to qualify and control who accesses the maps and when. You'll see today that we have a pilot system for Minnesota that was completed in 2022. And then over the November, December, and January timeframe, we said, well, how do we want to approach this? And so we developed a go forward plan. We also developed a funding. And so we obtained all of our funding just last month to take it to the next step. Many of you know that in the United States, there's a Common Ground Alliance, and they have over the years done a next practices initiative. And they did a case study on our project, and that was published in February of this year. So if you want a reference and detail of the project, I use this as a good example of a very thorough write-up that they did. And you can find it on the Common Ground website. So improving efficiency and reducing damages by providing ticket level visualizations of underground facilities to designers, locators, and excavators. One of their key comments is listed here: bringing damage prevention mapping technology and accessibility to 811 system end users has the potential to reduce dig-ins and increase efficiency at every step of the safe excavation process. We really couldn't have said this better ourselves. So we really appreciate the CGA bringing visibility and importance that we need to really know where things are in the ground through very high quality data. So if you look at what we have completed on a pilot scale, this is an example of the visibility of a one-call ticket. The outline is in black. This is where on our one-call system, the excavator says they're planning to dig. And then through what we call Fusion View, our open source software, it pulls in and allows access to viewing of the facility operator data lines. So here there's representation of communication, some sewer, and some electric lines. This is the system's not live in terms of going out and showing it to people pulling tickets, but it is live in the sense of a demo site and a pilot project. So this is a city in Minnesota that agreed to work with us, provided their data, and we have access to it real time, call in a ticket, and then we can view this data. Again, it really augments the one-call ticket. Everybody has to follow the one-call laws. You have to comply with everything in the whole process. We view this as an augmentation to it. In this example, this would be if I'm an administrator and I look at this intersection, I would see that there are 3 tickets currently live in the one-call system. The one in the circle, somebody's excavating there, somebody in that polygon, and somebody on the roadway. Now, if you're the person doing the ticket, this would be a very specific ticket. This is the one-call ticket for one of those areas where it's being done. This is a test ticket. And then as you see that these are the companies that are notified in this area and their positive response. And this again is the area that we chose. And then if you look at what we have here is this one polygon, one of those 3, this is tied to that ticket. It looks like we've got viewing access to electric and the communication and some sewer. But there's a lot more facility operators on that ticket that we're not able to view yet because we didn't have access to that data. But again, at the far in the future, and we'll determine how far that is, we should be able to see most of those facility operators line data on this map. Again, through proper vetting, approvals, and agreements. And then the top is total, but you can look then at each one of those as it scrolls by. So you can see, oh, I just want to look at the electric, for example, and then I can zoom in on that. Or I only want to see the sewer drains. I can zoom in on that. So you can get a total view if you want that. And then if you're getting close and really want to dig in a certain area and want to see a little zoom in on the electric, you can see that as well. We've got some great cooperation and endorsements from Minnesota, just to give you an example. One of the first ones was the Minnesota Clean Water Council. And you might ask, why would they want to endorse this? There's a lot of abandoned pipes in Minnesota. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes. and a lot of main rivers like the Mississippi, for example, and abandoned pipes are a great source for pollution spread. And so again, their interest was, let's be sure we know where those abandoned pipes are and help us minimize pollution. Minnesota counties and Geospatial Advisory Council are some others for the Minnesota effort. And again, most of you all know some of the other efforts that are similar to this. And again, Geoff played a key role in helping connect us to all of these organizations. And again, we just can't say thank you enough. So where are we on our development? So our pilot project was completed in September. We've got great discussions within the state of Minnesota and now nationally through visibility and really not support, but engagement with the Common Ground Alliance. So now we're taking that pilot system to production levels. And the goal here is that we're engaging the stakeholders, we're adding capabilities. We have to add the administration, the authentication. We know that it can be done. There's no invention needed to really scale it up to a national view, but we do have to add the controls in place so that the right people are looking at the right information at the right time and have access to it. We also want to look at improve the map visualizations. How do we represent a line on the map that is very accurate, was done by a Trimble unit or a GPS enabled locator or some other very accurate versus some things that may not be as accurate. So again, we do have a plan in place for that. And then again, facility operators may want more features applied, but right now we're looking at just line data. But again, it's up to what the facility operators want to show. We're able to show many different levels of the features. Gopher State One Call has a non-excavation ticket, which means as you're planning a major road construction or a major project, you want to see all the utilities and where they are and put those in place. So again, one of our first applications is how do we connect this process and capability with the design engineers and facility operators. It's a challenge sometimes to get the right maps to the right engineers, and this may help speed up that capability. And then what happens in the field, the bottom right here, when you find abandoned facilities or you're using locators that can send GPS data, and where you have it on your current map is showing up different with your GPS. How do you send that back to the facility operator so that you can see that they can decide, yep, well, there's new data. Should I go out and check it or should I put it in the updated map? So again, that's a capability that is in this system. So the plan, what is this software? The software is called, we're naming it Fusion View. That's what we're using as the name. It's a set of APIs for the data set. APIs from the Fusion View system into the One Call Center's database. Gopher State One Call uses One Call concepts as a platform. So again, these will be put into the One Call concepts database, but again, being open source, it'll be able to be put into any One Call system database. So it's easy to integrate into any One Call system. We had to make a decision. Are we going to only do it with One Call concepts or should we make it available to everybody? Again, each integration is separate depending on the software platform. And then as we develop it and move along, we can support the 3D systems, but also then identify additional features as needed. So just a high level time frame. Within the next 15 months, the core engine will be developed, and a lot of that will be done within the next 6 months. Establish connections with facility operators. Just yesterday at a conference, facility operator said, sign us up. We want to get going. We want to be first to have a connection. So we have our first verbal customer, so to speak, that wants connected. How do we view the maps, authenticate users, and put that process in place? And then the longer one, number 4, is that feedback back from the field into the facility operators database. So again, 15 months and then another 3 months. Again, as you know, things take a little, you do your best in timing, and some things go faster and some things go slower. The last part, again, Geoff helped us a lot, put us in contact regarding security and regulatory issues, no laws preventing data sharing, We get the chance as an industry to say, how should this work? Be sure we work with the ASCE standards. And then there are some guidelines that the US federal government put in place in 2005 to say, here's a decision tree on should you share data or not. And that's really an article really worth reading. Looking at agreements to view the data, both facility operators and the end users, being it design engineers, excavators, or locators, all parties have to have an agreement. And then it would terms would include access and controls. So again, that's a key part that's being put in place. Next steps for industry involvement. I'm developing through our team a development advisory committee. So as we take this next step over the next 15, 18 months, facility operators, engineering firms, and excavators, how do we develop a small core that we kind of work along together, that we design as it should be, as people wish it to be. We're thinking of starting with design tickets. That's our terminology here, but it's really major projects with the engineering firms and the facility operators, and perhaps then also a lot of interest from state and counties and cities, again, for engineering projects. So that's kind of the high level as to where we're at. It supplements the one-call process. The one-call process laws in every state and in Canada and wherever you are have to be complied with, but this right now augments the one-call system. So I think I have, I'd love to have some time for questions. I tried to provide that. So I think, John, we can open it up and see what people think.
Absolutely.
And what input we may have. So
absolutely. Thank you very much, Barb. That was great. And thanks for mentioning the contributions that Geoff was making to your work. I actually have a follow-up question in relation to Geoff's work with you. I'd be curious, what do you think is the most impactful contribution Geoff made to your project? Was it the connections? Was it his technical expertise?
Oh, that's just a great question. So I think the largest one was being such a cheerleader. And I mean that by saying, keep going, you're on the right path, even from day one, the encouragement. And then when we're talking about a subject, because we broke our team into 4 task teams, and he'd be right there in our discussions listening to us and saying, oh, you should look at this person, you should get with them. And then just keeping us, just pushing us in such a positive and persistent way that we just felt it. I mean, all the time.
Yeah, I found that Geoff could speak to me at my level of understanding, but I would watch him interact with others, and he could speak at so many different levels. He could talk at a really, really technical level if that's what you wanted to talk about, or he could talk at a much higher level broadly about the impacts of the fact that we're trying to untangle this ball of yarn that has grown over the years. That's how I've come to look at it. All the work that he was cheerleading has become this big ball of yarn of knots, and he was just picking at it, trying to get pieces out, trying to unstring it. And he was helping so many different groups do that, and SUMSF as part of that. That's great.
No, that was just tremendous. Yeah,
we've got some Q&A coming in. So yeah, everybody, you can post your questions in the chat or post them in the Q&A tool. There's one here from Harvey. Barb, are you linking to soil mapping to give users a preview for ease of excavation?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So that is something that one of our team members, Bob Besquez, says, we got to do it, we got to do it, we got to do it. And then I'm saying, yes, that could be a follow-on, but we have to deliver on the underground utilities. So that is something that could be done. That could be an application for it, but we haven't prioritized it just because this is an idea, it's a concept. This is where we are today. Other people may have better ideas that may get adopted, or this may evolve over the next year and a half or 2 years. But so the soil is something that's been brought up.
Yes, soil is important underground.
Yeah, right, no kidding.
Okay, I'm gonna take advantage there of asking my own question. In Minnesota, I'd actually be interested in hearing this answer from other people who work in different jurisdictions, but you talked about abandoned infrastructure. I'm sure we all know that, yeah, that's out there.
Mhm.
So in Minnesota, who takes responsibility? And
Well,
how do you figure out responsibility if it's literally like, there's something here, we don't know whose it is?
Well, the one call law in Minnesota is if you abandon something, you must locate it and mark it with a certain A in abandoned. That's the law. In practice, that's not completed very often. And when you supply maps in the design phase, abandoned facilities may or may not be included. If you put something into the one call system and then you leave it in the ground and abandon it, you still are responsible for marking it. But again, the compliance is low. If you find something in the ground that you don't know, there really isn't a process to find out whose it belongs to and who owns it. But as part of this process, we could develop a way to put it into Fusion View Minnesota and say, here's been reported on abandoned lines in the area. We don't know what they are or not, but people through their excavation and through the Fusion View process have submitted them back to us, and just be aware there's some are abandoned lines in that area. And those could be shown on the maps. And they could be depicted.
Okay, good stuff. You mentioned the Fusion View engine. How big is the team working on that software?
Well, the team is incredible. So it's a team by an organization, nonprofit organization called Shared Geo. Been in Minnesota since the mid 2000s. They're just a world leading effort in, they have a product called GeoMoose. So there's a small team there with years and years of experience on geospatial software projects. And what there is really, I don't overstate this, but there really isn't anything they can't do because they have such great experience. So we don't really see any hurdle to developing this because it's already the pilots here and they're just making it more robust and adding authentication. I make it sound easy, but they also make it sound easy when they talk about their progress. So it's a very impressive organization.
Where are they based out of?
Right here in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh,
right.
well,
Yeah,
perfect.
I know. So we don't have to go too far. Right.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. So there was a question about why bother to use the one call notification system as the basis for viewing underground utilities? You're adding on top of that with Fusion View. Why take that route instead of a different one?
Well, that's a good question. Why the one call ticket? So there's one option was to develop a large database, right? And put all the facility operators in a database. And then when you go dig, you yourself go into that big database, right? And pull out your area. We didn't think that was too practical because facility operators wish to control their data. What else could tie you to an excavation site better than a one call ticket? So it's a very limited area. Access at a very limited time to a ticket. So it provided a way to really put boundaries around the area that you're viewing and around the time limit that you can view that data. So we're not storing data, we're not taking data, we're just letting people view the data. And so that's how it really developed into the one call system. That's how the way we came to that recommendation.
Okay, great. And you said that the pilot is moving to production.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So how is it going to be? Is it a 1-year project, a 3-year, 5-year project? What does that look like?
Well, in about 6 months, you'll have a pretty robust system, is what the Shared Geo team is saying. and on a timeline about 15 months to get all the authentication done, documentation done. Again, if it's open source, it really needs to be well documented and connected in with then the One Call Concepts software system that we use as a One Call Center. So that's the timeline. Great progress in 6 months, getting people started to sign on, and then 15 months for some of the other add-ons.
And you mentioned the creation of an advisory committee to aid your efforts. How do people, who are you looking for? Who are the people that you think are the stakeholders that should be joining that group, and how do they join?
Yeah, so I'm starting to make that that request. For example, key facility operators, right at the contract locators, excavators, design, large design firms. So representation from those areas, not a big committee. I was thinking 7 to 10, but again, each one could go out and get input. But again, as we're starting this next big phase, let's be sure we get the input and the buy-in as we move through this process.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot, Barb. So we're coming to the end of our time.
Okay.
That was a great keynote. Thanks for tying in the work that Geoff was doing with you to your presentation. That's fantastic. Is there anything you wanted to leave the group with before we go to the break?
Well, just one thing, we have GPS on everything on the planet, right? Why can't we get it on the underground lines and people access that information, so we eliminate so many damages, so much pollution, so much bodily injury? It's just something we have to do. This meeting today is helping us take that, move that ball forward.
Yeah, it's a real shock to those in our community that know about the issue, but when we're like, yes, this is a problem. You start talking to people outside of the community, they're like, really?
Yeah,
it's
right.
that bad? I can't believe it. And we're like, yeah, unfortunately it is that bad, and that's normal. It's been normalized, but we're trying to change it.
Right.
Thank you very much for your efforts in that area. You've been a leader. Thanks so much.